Hi everyone, welcome to Grassroots Voices with Robin and Friends. I am Robin. This is where community and politics meet. As you know, this is a Facebook Live show, so I am going to go live right now in the groups, and then we will get started with the show. So this just might take a couple of minutes. So if you are watching the replay, you can go ahead and fast forward maybe a couple of minutes, about 5 minutes, and then you should be right at the start of the show. Thank you for your patience. It just takes a few minutes to get everything set up and to share this episode across over 80 Facebook groups. So it takes a few minutes. But again, thank you for coming. I'm really excited to speak with our guest, Zoe Stein. She was instrumental in Senator Ossoff's win during the runoffs. So it'll be wonderful to talk with her about the community mobilizing program John Ossoff launched about a year ago today. Okay, so just give me a couple minutes, and then we'll get started with the show. Thank you again for your patience on YouTube and if you're watching the replay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Grassroots Voices with Robin and Friends, where community and politics meet. I'm Robin. As you know, this is a Facebook Live show. This is where community and politics meet, and it takes some time for me to share this episode across the various Facebook groups, so it takes a few minutes. If you're watching the replay, just forward it maybe about 5 minutes, and you'll get to the start of the episode. Otherwise, just give me 1 or 2 minutes to start to share this episode across the groups, and then we will get started with our show today. I'm really excited for episode 19. You're going to meet Zoe Stein, who is one of the directors of Ossoff's community mobilizing program, which was a program during the runoffs that helped Senator Ossoff win. It was launched almost a year or so ago from today, and we're going to speak with her and talk a little bit about relational organizing and the power of technology in campaigns. So again, if you'll just give me maybe 2 or 3 minutes here, I'm going to start sharing this episode across all the Facebook groups, and then we will get started with the show. So again, thank you for your patience. It just takes a couple of minutes to allow people to hop on, and then we will get started. So in the meantime, tag some political friends if you would like, especially those in those battleground states. Also, you can always like and share this episode while you're waiting. Other than that, we will get started in 1 moment. So I'm starting to share across the groups. So if you're just joining us, welcome to Grassroots Voices with Robin and Friends, where community and politics meet. I'm Robin. This is a Facebook Live show streamed from the Team Stacey Abrams Facebook group. And then I share it across to various political groups in Georgia and across the country. So it just takes a few minutes for me to do this and to give people a chance to hop on live. And then we'll get started maybe in a couple of minutes. So again, if you're watching the replay, just go ahead and forward maybe 5 minutes or so, and then you'll get the start of the episode. So again, thank you for your patience and your attention. Thanks for stopping by here. I'm about halfway through. It's a lot of groups, a lot of groups. Okay. So much to talk about. All right. So our guest, if you're just hopping on now, this is episode 19. We'll be joined by Zoe Stein, who is one of the directors of Senator Ossoff's community mobilizing program, which was a historic program that launched about a year or so ago. It helped Senator Ossoff win the runoffs, and we're going to talk about relational organizing and the power of tech in campaigns. So again, just give me couple more minutes. I'm just sharing, again, this episode across the various Facebook groups, and that just takes a little bit of time here. I'm trying to get faster each week, but everyone's doing the best they can here. So again, check out the comments section. We're dropping various links, helpful information, some calls to action from past episodes. So check out the comments section while you're waiting, and we'll be getting started in about 1 more minute. All right. So again, if you're just tuning in, we're going to get started in 1 minute or so. I'm almost finished sharing this episode across the groups, and then we'll get started. So I always start the show with a video or just something, maybe some kind of media that I thought was interesting that I saw in the past week or so. And again, that gives people a chance to hop on to the Facebook Live. And then right after the video, we'll get into the interviews and the rest of the show. So I'm going to go ahead and start that video now. So again, thanks for your patience. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Okay. All right. Welcome to Grassroots Voices with Robin and Friends, where community and politics meet. I'm Robin. This is episode 19. We'll be joined by a special guest, Zoe Stein. She's one of the former directors of Ossoff for Senate's Community Mobilizing program, which is historic, and it launched about a year or so ago today. So she's come on the show, and we're going to discuss a little bit about relational organizing, the power of tech and campaigns, and talk a little bit about what we learned from the Community Mobilizer program. So Grassroots Voices is a Facebook Live show that's streamed from the Team Stacey Abrams Grassroots Facebook group. We're not an official Stacey Abrams group. All of our views and opinions and postings reflect our own views, but we do use the group to highlight Stacey Abrams, her work with voting rights, the census. We elevate the work of Fair Fight, Fair Count, SEEP, which is a Southern Economic Advancement Project. And we have people from all over Georgia and all over the country part of the group. I have to update this photo, but we have over 23,000 members now. So please join the group if you haven't already, and you can check the comment sections for the link that'll take you right to the group. And in this episode, we'll be reflecting back on John Ossoff's historic community mobilizing program. But before we get started, I wanted to show a few videos that I thought were interesting, and then give people some more time to hop on, and then we'll jump into our interview with Zoe and talk about the community mobilizing program. So this video is the CEO of Fair Fight Action and Stacey Abrams' campaign manager, Lauren Grow-Wargo. She was on Lawrence O'Donnell's Last Word, and she's talking a little bit about what's currently happening in Georgia in regards to the infighting with the Georgia GOP.
I'm reading this as good news for your campaign and Democrats generally in Georgia, that Republicans are now really attacking each other over this Republican gubernatorial nomination.
Look, it is quite a development that our incumbent Republican governor has a challenge by Trump and a failed U.S. senator, a loser who is a, quote, debate dodger and coastal elite who padded his pocket in the pandemic, his stock portfolio. That actually are all the lines from Brian Kemp's spokesperson, Cody Hall. I did not write those words. That's from his spokesperson. We agree. I interestingly agree with Sean Hannity that, quote, Kemp has been an ineffective governor. Look, at the end of the day, Georgians are suffering and struggling in this pandemic. We're going into a winter, Lawrence, where the Omicron variant is no doubt going to wreak so much havoc on our state that has low vaccination rate, a confusing, muddled, and completely bungled COVID response. So we're about serving Georgians. We are fighting for Georgians while they are fighting each other. And the contrast just could not be more clear.
What does it mean to the Republican Party more generally if Donald Trump is going to come in and create Republican primaries where there otherwise would not be any?
It's just such a clear message to normal voters that their concerns and their struggles and their pain and their needs are not important to this party. What matters to this party is those who appeal to Donald Trump himself and to his MAGA faction overall. And that's not what Georgians are about. Look, Lawrence, since Stacey's last campaign in 2018, about 1.3 million new voters have registered in Georgia. And they skew heavily Democratic, about 49% people of color. The whites that have registered are more liberal. We have very young voters overall, skewing young in our state. We will build a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition to win because we're about the people. We're about actually serving them and real plans. And that's what Stacey's been doing for the last 4 years. I've been on your show talking about voting rights, but we've been also forgiving Georgians' medical debts. We've been out there advocating for vaccines, getting vaccines in arms. We've been about the work and about the people. Meanwhile, these guys are in some, brawl about, who's more, cozying up to Donald Trump, and we get to be about the work. So no, look, I'm not happy about this. I'm very concerned about what's happening in our public schools that continue to be underfunded with a completely illogical and non-streamlined COVID response. Every day, it's a very difficult thing to live in the state in a pandemic because we've had no leadership. Brian Kemp is a failure. And that's why he's seeing strong challenges on both his right and left flanks. And so they can fight and do their thing and distract Kemp even further from his duties as governor and taking care of the state. And we're going to be out here making our case that to have 2022 be a good year for Georgia families coming out of these holidays, it's time for new leadership. It's time for Stacey Abrams. And we're unified, Lawrence. That's the other thing. We are unified. We're so proud of our Senator Warnock, who went to Washington and is bringing real money to our state, to our Savannah port, to our farmers, to our infrastructure. He and John Ossoff have been delivering. They have been present, and they're doing the work. And so we feel like there's a great federal record to run on. And then we have a very strong case against this consolidated Republican government that has not been serving Georgians, that's been focused on conspiracy theories and, so-called, election issues that don't exist. We've been focused about mitigating voter suppression, fighting for the people, and serving Georgians. And so we want everybody to join us, to go to StaceyAbrams.com and help us get the job done.
So how many more votes than the Republican will the Democrat have to get in order to win? And I say that based on Rachel's last hour, which was an examination of all the ways in which Republican legislatures around the country have changed laws and vote counting processes so that they'll be able to control them. And that happened in Georgia. There's been a change in law in the election processes in Georgia. Does that mean that you're going to need a cushion on top of a cushion, some number that is too big for them to cheat?
Look, I get this question all of the time. And here on this Monday, it's literally 5 weeks until the Georgia legislature, the Arizona legislature, and so many other state legislatures come back into session. And they have plans to do more voter fraud conspiracy legislation around fraudits and all kinds of bad MAGA faction ideas. Congress needs to act. This is not a partisan issue. This is about our democracy. We need the Freedom to Vote Act. We need the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act passed by this Congress as soon as possible. In 6 weeks from today, more states go. 7 weeks. We are about a month out from these legislatures reconvening, and we still have not had congressional action. Voters demand their democracy function. So we have not seen the end of them trying to rig the game. Lawrence, yes, you are correct. There have been all these bad bills passed, and they're going to come back and pass more. So we're going to keep fighting those bills. But this is a clarion call. Congress must act. We must have a functioning democracy. And to your question on campaign strategy, look, we from a campaign perspective, I have to assume no help is coming, though we'll continue to advocate, and that we'll have to assume that we're going to have the tools that we have, and no new tools for voters are going to be here. And if that's the case, we're going to go out there and make our case. We're going to put together this coalition. We're going to win as strongly as we can, and we're going to try and win up and down the ballot. Because just like David Perdue's out here talking about the Secretary of State, they're so mad didn't overturn the election, Brad Raffensperger's got a challenge to his right by a Stop the Steal person who would never certify an election. So it is critical that we get involved, not just in Georgia, but in your state races around the country to elect good governors and to elect secretaries of state and other folks down ballot to really help shore up our democracy in this midterm and for the next decade. Georgia becomes majority of people of color this decade, Lawrence. They're going to continue to try to rig the game here and across the country to really try to steal power.
All right, so that was great hearing from Lauren Grow-Wargo. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from her over the next year or so. Okay, so let's just get back to this episode. So today we're going to be reflecting back on Senator Jon Ossoff's historic community mobilizing program. We're going to learn about the power of relational organizing and how cutting edge technology is the future of campaigns. So I'm so happy that you all have an opportunity to meet today Zoe Stein, someone who I really love and admire. She was such great leadership during the runoffs for Team Ossoff, and I had the pleasure of being able to work with her. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Zoe, and then we'll launch into our conversation with Zoe. So Zoe Stein, she's the executive director of Doctors in Politics. Doctors in Politics are working to support and encourage more doctors who put patients first to run for office. Zoe has spent her career building community and fighting for structural change on national, statewide, and local campaigns. Recently, Zoe served as the Community Mobilizing Program Director for Jon Ossoff's Senate runoff campaign in 2021. Where she spearheaded a first of its kind paid relational turnout operation targeting low efficacy voters. Prior to that, she worked as field director for Dr. Haral Tipireni's congressional campaign in Arizona's 6th congressional district in 2020, and as the Arizona organizing director for Next Gen America in 2018. Zoe is committed to bringing new voices into the political arena and building a healthcare system that works for all of us. Originally from Westchester, New York, Zoe currently resides between Phoenix, Arizona, and Washington, D.C. All right, so we're going to bring Zoe in and we will go from there. All right. Hi, Zoe. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Okay, let's figure out why. Give me 1 second.
No problem. It's Zoom, we're used to it.
What a nightmare. Hold on one second.
No worries.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. We're so excited to talk about Team Ossoff. I mean, it literally just seems like it was just yesterday. Here we are a year or so later. Okay, I gotcha. Here we are a year or so later, and we're gearing up for another, really more than one. Here we go. Yay.
Okay, hi. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Okay, so how are you? Are you in Arizona?
I am in Arizona. I'm living in DC these days, but I came back for some of the winter months,
Okay.
or a couple weeks in December to see friends and family.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, that was very smart. So, here we are. It's been almost like a year or so, to the day or so that the Senator Ossoff launched the Community Mobilizing Program, and you were the program director. And I mean, how does it? We'll talk about what it is and everything else, but I mean, have you had a chance to decompress? I feel like I just started decompressing like in September of this year. So how's it been for you?
I think, and sometimes we text about this when something particularly cool happens in Congress, but every day is really great. I think it was the honor of a lifetime to be part of such an epic adventure with our team, yourself very much included. And we did a pretty crazy thing. It's very cool to see how many other campaigns this cycle are talking about something similar to a community mobilization program, which I think is really, really critical if we're going to transform the future of campaigns so that they are more inclusive and they're more representative of what the electorate should look like in this country rather than what the electorate currently is in many elections.
And so, yeah, so for people who don't know, can you go ahead and just talk about like what is the community mobilizing program, which was, you know, started for the runoffs for Senator Ossoff, now Senator Ossoff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that I first and foremost am speaking in my own personal capacity as I'm no longer staff on the campaign or for the senator. Also, I will say that the community mobilization program was very much John's or the Senator Ossoff's idea, and we're very fortunate because we knew on our program that we were one of the favorite programs, if not the favorite program of the senator. But it was this radical concept of the thinking through how we reach voters that typically are not included when we do traditional voter outreach, and who the best messengers to talk to those voters are. And the best messenger for that would be their own friends and family who they trust and know and have been speaking to them their whole life. And sometimes we use just like such insane vernacular and like the rhetoric that we have when we are talking about campaigns is just so convoluted that we actually forget what we're trying to do, which is we are trying to participate in our democracy so that the person that we are electing and sending to DC to cast votes on our behalf actually cares about us. So the community mobilization program was employing what ended up being 2,888 people from Georgia to talk to their own friends and family in their life and help them vote in that election. And by help, I mean make sure that they knew where to go, who was on the ballot, what was at stake, and any other questions like when the polling place closed or when early voting started, stuff that actually is like very reasonable questions to have, that if you are not someone that is committed your whole life to deep diving into campaigning, you don't necessarily know how to find that information, and we don't really make it easy. So we thought, how can we have more messengers out there across the state helping everyone who wants to participate in an election do just that? Well, let's bring them on the team. And you know, we were very, very fortunate, and I actually think it's quite unique in campaigns that money wasn't really a barrier for us. We really had the entire country throwing their support behind Georgia. So it was also fantastic that, you know, the senator was running on a platform of health, jobs, and justice, and we were able to create quite a number of jobs prior to him actually being elected. And it was during a time where a lot of people were really hurting. And one of the things that was like a value and priority in our program was, do we want to spend more money on TV, or do we want to put that back into the community across the state and have people be compensated for the work that we're asking them to do, which is have more people participate in this election. So it was the largest paid relational program done on a candidate campaign to date, is my understanding still. But Rob, I mean, what were your thoughts? You were managing almost 100 folks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one thing I wanted to add too, and then can you just talk about why you chose to hire people who had not been involved in campaigns before?
Actually, that's a really fantastic question. So yeah, we were pretty selective in the criteria we were looking for, in that we were not selective at all. We wanted folks that almost could be considered apathetic in a way, and it truly wasn't apathy. It's more, if you've never been talked to about why participating in elections is so critical, or at least not regularly every day with it down your throat, why would you know? We wanted folks that traditionally kind of stay away from politics because they just don't, it hasn't naturally intersected in their life. The reason we wanted to do that was because, and there's this idea called the homophily effect, or it's like this concept, right, where the people in your network are like you. So if we had people that we employed in this program that were like yourself and me, that were like super vols if we're not on a campaign, or, you know, you go to all the precinct captain meetings, the people you know are going to also be good voters because they know you. So we needed to find folks that like traditionally actually like aren't really that interested in voting, because by definition the people that are in their life will be more similar to them than they would be to our traditional organizers or volunteer or campaign staffers. And the way we can do that, or what that enables us to do rather, is reach more people. So you know, when you talk about a campaign and you think about the voters you need to talk to win, there's this like universe of people. You use the term universe. There's this universe of people that they always vote no matter what. And you usually talk to them first, because at the end of the day, the ones that are going to always vote no matter what, you need them to be voting for you. And then once you really saturate that market of the people that are always going to be voting, and they now know about you and your candidacy, you can kind of expand out. And on the Ossoff campaign, we really flipped that idea on its head. And we said, who are the people that probably actually maybe won't vote if, like, maybe they don't know there's a runoff. Like, it's a pretty unusual thing that after the November 2020 elections, okay, now we have to all go out and do it again. And you're going to have 2 senators on the ballot, and you get to vote for both the Democrats. I mean, that's just like, what? That's wild. That's like, what a crazy, unique thing. So we decided to make sure that we were expanding our reach as far as possible and including as many people as we could possibly include. And then, so we were looking for non-traditional campaign staffers. Also, you know, there's a lot of systemic inequities that exist in the world, but also particularly in like the electoral process and campaigning. And I mean, you know this, and we've talked about it quite extensively, but to be a campaign staffer, there are a lot of barriers to overcome. And consequently, the pool of folks that apply for campaigns are, you know, myself included, are overwhelmingly white, you know, of middle to upper income comparatively, because it's a pretty unstable job market, and don't necessarily or typically match sometimes the demographics we're trying of the communities we're trying to reach, where there are more infrequent voters for a variety of reasons. So if we're trying to expand the electorate meaningfully, and we know that the best messengers are people from that community, then we should be hiring and employing people from those communities to do that work. So that was kind of the idea of the program.
That was, yes, that was so groundbreaking, because so many times, you know, with campaigns, you know, people put in a lot of work and they may or may not be paid, or, you know, there's just not, like you said, a whole lot of opportunities to be part of staff sometimes. So that's great that so many, it was like you said, over 25, what was the number, 2000?
So the goal actually was to hit when they first pitched the idea of the program, and I was like early conversations, by early, like 30 days out. You know, my understanding was that we were trying to build something that was going to be like several hundred, maybe 1,500 people. And we were told to like write this program, and like we'll review it with senior leadership on the campaign. And we wrote this program. They're like, everything looks great, except actually instead of 1,500 people, we'd like to hire 3,000 Georgians to do this work, which is like, oh, for sure. That's no different at all. Then I like, you know, almost went into a corner and threw up. But it was really very, very exciting to have such a privilege to work on something like that. And by election day, we did fall a little short. We had 2,888 people who completed their onboarding training. And one of the coolest parts about the onboarding training, and I'm curious, like, I'm sure you recall this, but we had some pretty strict policies amongst our staff of Mobilizers that we used as little jargon as possible, and that we made sure that there was never any moment that anyone would interact with anyone from our team and leave a conversation feeling less qualified to vote. And it's very easy to sometimes, you know, when you're interacting with campaign staff or you know, candidate campaigns, or you're watching the news and you know you should know more, you know you don't know enough, you don't really know where to start. No one likes feeling dumb. It's not a great feeling to feel like you should know more and you don't really know where to begin. So you tune it out. And we did not want to be the reason that would be true for anyone. So the initial onboarding that people went through, the idea was to make it as accessible as possible. So you didn't need to have your camera on. You didn't need to participate unless you wanted to. There was office hours after. We offered several onboardings every day. They were kept quite short. And in that, we did like a really quick Civics 101 review. So it's okay if you don't know what the U.S. Senate is or how it works. We're gonna real quick go over it. We made sure that the onboarding catered to different types of learners. So if you're a visual learner, if you're an auditory learner, if you need a training in a different language, we had that available. And now there are at least 2,880 people across the state of Georgia that are able to take the knowledge they gained as part of our program and make sure that they can go turn out and do it again, because we have another Senate race and a governor's race.
I know, it's crazy.
I'll do it one more time.
It's like deja vu.
It's absurd.
Oh my gosh. So another thing that people maybe, aren't realizing is how quickly this program came into being. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and just the time I've been with campaigns and in politics. So maybe talk a little bit. It was like almost like a startup, but why don't you talk a little bit about just some of the time frames that we were working with?
Okay, so like you said, it was almost a year ago to date. So excuse me if some of these numbers are a tad bit off, but Thanksgiving of last year, the program was not yet up and running or like even finalized. A few weeks after that, it was decided that we're going to run this community mobilization program.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let me just interrupt real quick. So election day was January 5th. So as of Thanksgiving, this program was not up and running yet. Okay, so all right.
Yeah. And we had hired some staff, and we were doing for a voter registration program because the voter registration deadline was coming up. We were coming up on it, and then when the voter registration deadline passed, we're like, we had some staff that were ready to go to do this like turnout effort. So it was actually Brady Hill, who is in your pod, one of our deputies. I remember going over to his supporter housing. So supporter housing is basically when you have volunteers that are kind enough to open up their home and let campaign staff stay there to save the campaign some money and to let staff meet people from the area. And then Drew Weber, who is another one of our deputies. And I remember coming over to their house with like some pretty big flip charts that I had got at Office Max and let them know that we're going to do a community mobilization program. What it means is that we're going to hire over 1,000 people from across the state, and we need to hire a bunch of managers very quickly that will share the values of this program and understand what we're trying to do. And by very quickly, I mean like in less than 10 days, all the hiring of the managers needs to be done. So let's get going. And their response was like truly disbelief. I think that they were appeasing me as their manager, and they're like, sure, we're going to hire over 1,000 people and 35 managers. So it actually worked out to 35 managers. You'd have to be included, like our regional mobilization managers, because when we realized we were going to be trying to hire 3,000 people, we're like, okay, so how many managers is that going to require? So it was hiring all day, every day, doing interviews and making sure that we found folks that were like, honestly, like you, that understood that we're not going to win if we do not make this a space where more people want to be a part of it. If we do not make this as unbelievably like thoughtful and inclusive and informative, but fun and engaging as possible. And I think it was less than 10 days, we got the managers hired. We had to onboard all of them very quickly of like, this is the program. We know you've been taught other things in other campaigns about holding people accountable to goals. We were like, we're going to throw that out the window. If someone doesn't hit their goal of adding 30 friends and family to our network each week, that's okay. Just see if you can help figure out why and what support they need, and then just keep going. We, in 22 days, got all 2,888 folks trained and onboarded. So we had 22 different start dates of community mobilizers. And I believe in less than 2 weeks, and some of these timelines overlap with each other, we were able to get all of the community mobilization applications in. So we had over 12,000 people apply to be mobilizers. It was a little bit of a first come, first serve basis. We had an incredible recruitment team. So Darren Owens, who now works for the senator, who is just the best, hired a team that was almost entirely, I think, with the exception of one of his folks, everyone was from Georgia, which was very cool. It was entirely black team, with the exception of Philly, who was from, I think he's from LA actually, but and was able to make sure that our recruitment materials are like also in Spanish and as inclusive as possible across the state. We were in all the local Georgia outlets where people were looking for gig jobs. And with 12,000 applicants, Shivani Chakrabarty's operations team that grew to like over 20 people had to conduct 11,000 interviews, of which our regional managers helped out with. So the 11,000 interviews in and of itself is like a pretty wild thing.
Yes.
I think you'll remember some days all day. We were just all interviewing all day. What was the most interviews that you had conducted in a day? It was crazy.
It was maybe close to 100, or it was up there. Literally, it was all day.
it was like 12 hours of interviews that were 15 minutes each. And even those interviews that like had such value add, because you were able to talk to people and say like, where do you get your news from? What issues matter to you in your life right now? Why are you interested in this role? How did you hear about this? Did you know there was a runoff? And it was just an awesome opportunity to have even like have more one-on-one like to get 11,000 people on the doors to engage in that level of a conversation with you. You have to knock 10 times that number of doors.
Yeah.
And this was a call, like they called us for like, that's fantastic. So with that, we were able to make 3,000 offers, and then 2,008 were able to get through the program. And yeah, and in less than 28 days or 25 days, it had happened.
Yes. And it's so cool because, when you're saying hiring, it wasn't like, it was an interview and then the person when you're saying hiring, like they had to go through, the paperwork, all the paperwork you have to do, when you're hired, and then like you said, the trainings. And so to onboard so many people, at one time, over those couple of weeks it's outstanding. It really is outstanding.
I feel so fortunate, but we just also had a really incredible team. I think everyone understood that. I mean, it really felt like the weight of the world was on our shoulders, and we just like failure just really wasn't an option. Like if we wanted Biden to be able to get anything done on his agenda, we had to flip the Senate, and that meant we need two more senators, and we had a chance to elect two more senators. So everyone was really pulled their weight and was like, we're going to do it. We're going to give it more than 10,000%. And it was a very solutions oriented team. I think that we tried things, and when it didn't work, we're like, nope, tweak it.
Yeah.
Like the dashboard that we used for management. I think
dashboard. I love that dashboard.
Do you want to explain dashboard? I mean,
no, go ahead.
I mean, I will say the dashboard was the most beautiful piece of software I've ever seen in my life for working with large and diverse teams. Basically how it worked was I mentioned briefly with talking about the idea that there were these goals. So community mobilizers were asked to get 30 folks every week to vote. And there are many tools on the market now for relational organizing, which actually speaks to this idea that campaigns are recognizing the value add that it has, and it's growing as a tool in the toolbox for voter outreach. But there are now many different types of tools, like physical software, tech, etc. We used Reach. There are other tools that also exist, but
you just Reach, define relational organizing, just again for people who don't know, and then before you talk about Reach.
Absolutely. So the too long didn't read of relational organizing is that you are the best person to get your friends and family to vote. Not the organizer from the campaign that just popped in from another state, not the TV ad that is getting blanketed that you're seeing, every time a commercial comes on, not the 17,000 pieces of mail that are going to end up in your mailbox. If you want someone to vote, the most effective thing that we can have is a peer-to-peer conversation, or a family, peer, person to someone in their life conversation. And that is the most persuasive. It is the most efficient. It is the most effective. The problem with typically with relational organizing, or so how it has been discussed, is that it's typically hard to scale and hard to measure, because when you show up at a campaign and you're here to help, they give you a list and say, these are the 30 doors you need to go knock on, come back at 2:00, let us know how it went. 10% of them will be home, and that you those doors, you knocked on them, like mission accomplished. And that's a very measurable thing, and for a volunteer that feels actually very, to a degree, pretty effective. I went and did a thing. What was the thing? I knocked on these doors. I had some conversations. But the conversation that you have at the dinner table with your younger sister and your mom, who don't really know if they even want to vote right now, I mean, that's not nearly as measurable. It's it might feel more heated. It's emotionally sometimes can be very taxing. You don't really get credit for it in a way that you typically get credit for other volunteer activities. That's rewarding in a dopamine rush kind of way of checking a box. So if you show up at a campaign office, you're I had 7 conversations with my friends today at the book club. Cool. I don't know where they live. I don't know how frequently those people vote, if they're even registered. So it really is one of these tactics that while we know is very effective, campaigns are sometimes hesitant to implement and spend a lot of money And like I said, it's not as measurable. And you know that you have this universe of voters you're trying to talk to. And if you are a director, or, and you're running a voter conduct program, the concept that all these blind conversations are happening that you have very little control over and supervision of is it's a little scary. Like from a management perspective on a campaign, it's a little scary. So relational organizing, this is the idea of like have the people in the lot, so that your voters are trying to reach, who are the folks in their life, have them be those people having these conversations. So Ossoff's relational program actually was, you can think of it as a plane with two arms, but one arm was just larger in size. So it was the paid program, which was the community mobilization program, and then it was the volunteer program, which was run by Davis Leonard, who is incredible and brilliant, and she was their digital organizing director for the campaign. So there are volunteers that came to the campaign that were like, I want to help. And before they called any strangers in the voter file, what we had them do was, who are all of the people in Georgia that you know, put them all into, and then the app we used was Reach. So put them all into Reach and reach out to all of them and make sure that they are voting and they understand what's going on in this election. And once you reach all of that's why it's a warm touch is another way we refer to it. So once you talk to everyone that you are the best messenger to own, we actually will know that you're responsible for those voters. And like, we're not going to have to blow up their phone and do all this other stuff because you, Robin, you've got it. Like your sisters and your brother and your partner, like that's on you. Now let's make sure that we're spending the volunteer time reaching out to all the other folks that we don't have any warm leads to. So with that being the volunteer side of things, we knew that this is clearly the most effective way for us to get people participating in this election and for listening and engaged. We need to scale it. And if we're going to scale it and we're going to try to reach people that are historically not included in this type of stuff, we need to make sure that we're bringing in folks from those communities specifically and asking them, asking them to be part of this team with us. Yeah. So hopefully that was an overview of the relational program. And then the app we use, like I said, was Reach. And then all this data was coming in. So like we had 2,880 people plus all the volunteers putting 30 plus folks into an app every week for voters that they were trying to reach. So we needed a way on the back end to make sure we could manage that information that was coming into our systems. So we built, and then Joshua Kravitz, who is a brilliant data director for the program, built this thing that we call the dashboard. And what it did was show who was having, who the community mobilizers were, who their manager was, how many conversations they were having, how those conversations were going. So some of the things they would log is are the folks in their life aware that there's an election? Do they know how they're getting to the polls? How likely are they to vote? There were other types of things that were in this range of traditional questions you would see when you're canvassing. So if you're a minivan, you would see similar things of support scores and whatnot. And then we would be able to see, okay, if you are managing 90 folks as a regional manager, you can't call on 90 community mobilizers in one day and check in on all of them. You just it's just not possible. Also, this was not a full-time job. It was very much like a part-time thing that people were doing to get compensated for the work that they were doing on this campaign. So your boss shouldn't be blowing up your phone all day. You have a life, you have work, you have maybe kids, you have school. So the point of the dashboard was to make it as easy as possible to know that if you're only going to be able to call 10 people today that you are overseeing in this program, what is the best use of your time as the manager? And who needs the most help? Who is sending in their weekly report saying that the question they hear the most often from people is why they should vote? We can actually answer why they should, right? There's a lot of different reasons that some people would want to vote or should vote. And if you know that this one particular person compared to the other folks you're managing has the most questions around why this election is important, that's who you should wake up and call in the morning. So the dashboard really helped metabolize a lot of that information that was coming in so that we could spend our time most effectively in supporting the community mobilizers best and in the specific ways they needed support. I said a lot of words. If there's any clarifying points, let me know.
Yeah, no, it was great because just when originally I think I heard or something about the program and I was just oh yeah, maybe I'll apply, or something. And then when I think I talked to someone and kind of told them a little bit about, some of my, political experiences. And then they were like, you need to maybe talk to Drew or, and then I think the next time I, heard from Drew, and then there was that opportunity, as a regional mobilizing manager. So we
got so lucky.
Right. I know. It's funny because I was trying to decide this whole, like all of 2020, like, do I want to try to, really get on a campaign or stay like in a volunteer grassroots, capability, which, I normally don't do because I'm usually on campaigns. But it was so funny because I said, I'm going to stay open. And I always liked, Team Ossoff. I had a lot of, experiences with the senator and, his mother and dad and just, a lot of the people. And so I, said if there was ever a campaign, I would love to be part of, Senator Ossoff. So, but I really, after the general election ended, I really, just didn't know what was going to happen. And then here comes the runoff, and then in the middle of the holiday season. And so,
all
the holidays. So anyway, I hopped on, and then it was like hit the ground running. And you're so right. Brady was wonderful. And we just had a wonderful team. It's just everybody, I really enjoyed working with. But it was really cool to go through that interview process and interview the various applicants, because I don't think any of the applicants that I interviewed were on my team, which was kind of cool because I, got to get to know, a little bit about, some of them. But it was just really, it was like talking to so many people at one time. You would hear like the similar themes or similar concerns. And then by the time, I had my team, I think in the end I had about 82 community mobilizers that I was working with. But by the time I had, my team, I kind of knew, what people were saying and a lot of the, just a lot of the ideas and concerns and stuff like that. But, and I'm Facebook friends with like a few of my community mobilizers, and I keep up with them. Yeah. But it was such a fun experience because it was so like just focused specifically on this program. So we could let the organizers do what they were doing and, everybody else. And we were just kind of, in this little bubble, working.
And it was like, it was like so exemplary of like what campaigns could be, I think, right? Like we had the get out the vote, like the final 4 days leading up to election day when we started doing the phone banking, but we had made our own phone bank app called, we called it Outreach. We thought we were very funny. But it was a relational phone bank. It's like phone bank. So if anyone's ever done calls to like Open VPB or whatever other software using, I mean, like it's a pretty grueling experience, and it's kind of like, not throwing any shade, saying this in my own capacity, but like it's kind of ugly looking, and it's monotonous and ongoing, and you just want to be done. And this was like pretty cool because one, we had confetti and fun videos, but that aside, we also like had the folks that you would be calling be listed in priority order of the folks that are already in your network. So it was your friends and family, and then there's like some weird big data out there on like people's like scores when it comes to voting, like how likely you are to vote based off like different consumer data, whatever. And with like more things to get into at a different time. But we were able to know that like it is, if you were going to call, you only had an hour to call and you had 50 people to call, like what is the best bang for your buck, and making sure that the folks you're calling are the ones that need that push the most to vote. And actually, like, you have your friend from college in on that list. They actually have another voter in their household. So we're going to have you also make sure, and that other voter happens to be like their sister. So like, we're going to also ask about their sister, and then we can pull in a phone number for them from the public voter file, which was available data. But the point I'm trying to get at with saying all this stuff is that it was the only phone bank I've ever been a part of where no one got yelled at.
Right.
And like what I mean by that is like not from staff or anyone, but when you call, when you're calling people to vote and they did not ask you to call them and they do not know who you are, it's a pretty unwanted phone call. Sometimes it's like the 5th phone call that person has gotten that week or that day even. And what they want to tell you to do is F off, because they're trying to make dinner, or they're trying to they're at work, or they were expecting a call from the doctor, and what they didn't want was this like person they've never met before asking how they're voting. But also that's like assuming they pick up the phone in the first place. It was very funny because we had John Ossoff record a video for the 100th call that someone made in the phone bank. And I think only 2 people ended up getting to the video because we had a contact rate of over 70% in the phone bank, which is like a normal contact rate is like 20 is great. Like if you have a 20% contact rate, like you're crushing it. Yeah. To have a 70+% contact rate is like absurd. And it's because when you call your mom's going to answer because she has your number saved and wants to know why you're calling her. So no one was able to even get to 100 calls, but it was such a more impactful conversation for everyone. And the time that they spent actually making calls was actually spent reaching voters
Mhm.
and getting the information they needed. So it was like insane. It was really fun. I mean, what do you remember from those events? Like,
Yes, I liked how it was very, I mean, it was, well, first of all, I just love that, number one, we could do everything virtually or from home. So that was kind of cool. And then, you know, and still be able to communicate with the community mobilizers. But then I loved how there were then little in-person, either like the unveiling of the various murals across Georgia, and that was an opportunity for people to come and meet Senator Ossoff and take a photo with him and come in, you know, pick up their swag bag, or, you know, just meet other mobilizers. So I love that element of it too. And then how social media was used as well.
No, that's such a good point. Yeah. So Dana Sherry ran that beautiful special projects department, and both special projects and community mobilizers worked pretty hand in hand on many things. Like you mentioned, there was the Artist for Ossoff program that was run, and it was like a few different, like a value that was very consistent on both of our programs that I was like at the forefront was like equity and inclusion, and also that our team should look like the communities that John's trying to represent, and the work that we're in, who we're trying to have turn out and vote. So like for the community mobilizers program, it was at least 50% folks of color. It was like very, very critical to what we were doing. So because it should be, it's Georgia. And for the Artists for Ossoff program, another demographic of folks that are like typically hard to, you know, pin down for a variety of reasons are artists. And they were also really struggling during COVID in a similar way. So by getting these folks to be part of this campaign in a way that is like the most expressive to them was so cool, because not only is like this artist now engaged in this campaign, like part of this movement, but like everyone in their life knows that they just did this cool, massive art piece in the city that they live in and in their community. And, you know, it was a destination people could go visit. It like really did like flip on its head, like the current like civic culture of civic engagement into something that is like so much more exciting and appealing and inspiring. So that was awesome.
Yeah, it's like I never, you know, I have been on more, you know, either presidential or local. This was my first like official, you know, Senate race, you know, outside of, you know, volunteering and things like that. But yeah, usually they're not as fun and flashy as the runoffs were, you know, at all. So yeah, and I mean, I think some of that is a tiny bit of just, you know, Georgia's personality a little bit too. And of course the candidates, you know, that we had, and it was really exciting. And I wanted to highlight, it was one of my community mobilizers. She was a young woman who lives in a predominantly Muslim community here in Georgia. And so she, you know, she just worked her network. It was some kind of organization that her father was really big in, and it was a lot of Muslim voters, and she just kept working her network. And in the end, I think she had like 400 or 500 people in her network. And I mean, and she got out, it was like over 300 people, you know, directly like
oh my God, what a hero.
And she, you know, she was like, oh, I hadn't been involved in politics before, and she never worked on a campaign, and I'm like, oh my God, girl, do you know how like this is huge, you know? Like you're doing the best job you could possibly be doing. And I mean, I think another thing that just like spoke to like the team's culture and like the culture of the campaign, that like also I will say it very much started at the top. Like I was very fortunate that I had my managers and like the candidate himself was like were extremely supportive and like very much the like spearheaders of such a program. But on election day, John also called through our mobilizers. Do you remember? Like, I don't know if any of yours got calls, but he thought that was the most important and productive thing he could be doing, and that he needed to thank the folks that were like out there doing this. And you know, like there's the show up at the polling place and take the photos. He's like, I also need to call the mobilizers. And he literally sat there for like over an hour calling through as many mobilizers as he could to say, like, keep going, you're doing a great job, and thank you so much. And this is our battle together. So it was pretty cool. I think some of the mobilizers, I remember they didn't believe it was actually John Ossoff calling, and they're like, prove it. And he's like, how should I prove it? Like, yeah, it's so true. Yes. And then, you know, and he really gets it. I just feel like and that's why I just love and admire him so much, because he really gets the community building. He really understands community and really cares about people. So it's not surprising that, you know, it came from the top. But it was funny because when I went through my interview to come onto the team, I forgot who it initially was with, but she was saying, I think she had also worked on his congressional race, but this person was saying that we can't do the same thing twice, you know, when it came to the runoffs. And I just, you know, I loved that attitude because, you know, there's so many times campaigns will keep doing the same thing, regardless if they've had the results, you know, over and over again. But that's what I loved about this program, is because he really, I won't say he took a risk, but it was just, he just thought, I mean, I guess it was a risk in one sense because it just had never been done, but he really just went outside the box, you know, and was open to being outside the comfort zone, and it paid off. You know, we got the result we needed.
Oh yeah, and I think in like a way that will have like really lasting benefits. Like we can only hope and then work really hard for this to stay true, but really lasting results for future elections too, right? Like the folks that we engaged, like learned how the Senate works and why voting dates change, and I mean that's knowledge that they like. That's their knowledge that they hold and fight now, right? Like that's stuff that they can still share with their community. I mean, every mobilizer in our program knows that there's a voter protection hotline, and that there's rides to the polls, and that those are resources that exist and where to find them. Like that is almost 3,000 more people across the state that are harbingers of that information. That is like the difference of people being able to participate in an election or not. Like that's awesome. Like if nothing else, that is actually still incredibly awesome, especially in a state with like Georgia, where, you know, not everyone's trying to make it easier. In fact, some are working very hard to make it not easy at all.
Yes, working very hard. And then I like to during in Obama in 2008, there was this respect, empower, and include motto when it came to approaching the campaign and organizing. And I just felt when I heard about the Community Mobilizer program, it just hit all of those: respect, empower, and include, because, you know, again, you were paying people, you know, training them, giving them information that maybe normally people maybe wouldn't be paid, but, you know, you really, and then you empowered them, you know, with the information, and included them, because again, like you said, a lot of people that were hired maybe wouldn't have been normally included, you know, in the process. So so that was, to me, again, one of you know, the best parts of the program. I just know also, you know, towards the end, you know, we were all, you know, there were still people coming on board, like all the way almost up to election day, you know. And so so we would get our names, you know, and we would, you know, reach out to people, and then, you know, just when you think maybe like this is going to be your final team, then, you know,
you're like, oh no, you have 20 more people today.
20, it'd be like 50. And then you have to go through all of them, and then there might be like 12 more, you know, the final day leading up to it. So you know, we finally had our teams and everything. So that was kind of funny. But everyone really supported one another and shared ideas, and, you know, shared templates, you know, just anything that we could do to support one another. That felt really good too. So it was such a positive experience.
I mean, one that's like, so warms my heart like so deeply, but also, I mean, y'all made it so easy. I mean, it's like very it's quite an honor to like get on, you know, calls like this with you and like be introduced as the director of this program. Like, I mean, I had a really incredible team of like folks like yourself, and I mean, like between best practice sharing and being solutions oriented, and like genuinely wanting to just like do everything we could do to make everyone else's lives as easy as possible and as smooth as possible. Because like the things that became smoother for managers resulted in community mobilizers having a better time in the program. That was the priority. Make sure that these folks have the best possible time they could have in this program, and they're doing so we can do this impactful work and continue to do so. I mean, everyone was so flexible. I can't think of any other team I've been on where we have told a manager, you're about to get 35 more direct reports in 2 hours. And they're like, okay,
right.
Sounds great.
Bring it on. Yep.
And like genuinely in a let's do this. That's so exciting. Like, it wasn't even like a sassy, like, all right, fine. Like, I guess so. It was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm going to be at like over 90 folks on my team. But sure, yeah, no, we're really thrilled to have them. Let me know and to reach out. That was so cool. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better team to like go through this adventure with. I mean, it really was like, because all campaigns say this like very cheesy line of like, oh, we're building the plane as we fly it. And I remember our team was like, no, we're like very much, that is 1,000% true. Someone was asking why we didn't have a description on a flyer at some point early on in recruitment. And it was like, oh, we didn't have the job. We weren't totally sure what the job description was going to be, and they had to get printed that day.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I got that.
like we knew what it wasn't, and we had some ideas, but I mean, yeah, it was going to take X number of hours for the union print job to get them out, and we don't have time. So just print them.
Yes. And then what was great too, because I know there were maybe one or two events where Senator Ossoff had a Zoom with all the community mobilizers. I think there was one before the election, and then there was one after the election.
You moderated one of them, yeah.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, that was really fun. Forgot to introduce myself, but I just seen him so many times, and it's like he's so personable, and it's like you just assume like, oh yeah, he knows me. I don't know.
No, it's crazy. Yeah,
but
that was very cool.
But yeah, it was, so Senator Ossoff, he really cared about the program. So he had a Zoom with the community mobilizers before election day. And I remember one of the questions or something that he covered was how important this community mobilizing program was for rural areas, because, we had community mobilizers across all the counties in Georgia. And so, there were certain CMs who lived in these rural areas that were very red. And they were I remember, Senator Ossoff said, like, you're an extension of the campaign, so you're kind of representing us. And, and a lot of people like really took that to heart. And they, in a lot of those rural areas, he either did a lot better in or didn't do, as bad as, the general I just feel like that relational organizing and using the app, it is so critical for those rural areas or areas, red areas too.
And I think it actually also made the whole experience of like wanting to participate in a program like ours a lot less lonely. I mean, if you live in like an area like that, and whether or not you identify as Democrat, Republican, or whatever, but like this is who you want to vote for because these are your values. And then you look around, you're like, there is nobody saying what I'm thinking, right? I mean, whether it's the lack of yard signs or whatever, you've just grown up in that community, and being able to be rewarded not for like the physical number of doors that you knocked on in your neighborhood where it's going to be, I mean, honestly, possibly unsafe. Mm-hmm. But that like you still have so much value add to bring to the table and be part of this work. And we need you, and we need the folks that and we need you to be the messenger that goes and talks to those folks. Like that's awesome. Like that's huge. So that was very cool. Yeah. And
so how do you think for 2022, do you think this is something that could be like replicated again, or what do you think?
Well, so I'm extremely biased, and I will say not the expert per se on the nuances of all these different campaigns that are interesting to me like this, but like the short, like yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that if you value and prioritize expanding the electorate, and you think about and we talk about in honest terms who is not included typically in the electorate, and you have to come up with a creative and innovative way to fix that. And I think a community mobilization program is a tremendous, tremendous way to make massive headway in that. I think that it is as inclusive as we could have been in the work that was getting done. I mean, where you lived, what type of technology you had access to, what, even party you would like say that you grew up as a part of, like all of those things we can work around it. How much time you have in your day to volunteer, if you have access to transportation, like we figured it out. Like it doesn't, those things don't matter. If you want to help, we have found a way for you to help. And we know that if we can, there's a few reasons that I will say the program was successful. There are many. The big ones though, if you were going to do a paid scaled relational program, is that you need good management and you need good data. Are two really critical things. And the good data is like, I would say actually secondary to the good management. And I think that if you don't have support from above and below, then it's not possible to do, right? Like, I think that I was able to have a lot of creative leeway in what I wanted to do because my managers trusted me and believed that this was worthwhile. And I think that like by extension, like the folks like yourself were able to have a lot of freedom and creative license with like how you handled your pod, like your teams and your pods, because I'm not on the phone with the community mobilizers. You are.
Yeah.
So like, you tell me what they need. Like, is it like, is it a BuzzFeed quiz with, are you ready for the runoff, with different questions that make sure that folks know, like, can you vote for 2 people? When do polls close, etc.? Or is actually what people need, blast email, or, I'm using pretty not exciting examples in this specific moment, but like, whatever. The point being, I think you need to have support, and that falls into the management. I think you need managers that believe in the concept that everyone we engage with is qualified to be participating in the electorate and be voters, like, hard stop. And it doesn't matter if they where they're from in the state. It doesn't matter what education level they received or what schools they went to or how much money their parents had. Like, if they are meeting the criteria to be a registered voter here, then it's our job to help them vote and be part of this, and that they should feel really proud to be able to be part of this campaign. I mean, they were also staff, right? Like, they were part of this campaign, so were we.
Absolutely.
So that was just like awesome. I think that the tricky things with the program are figuring out costs. I think that like we actually could probably run this program on like a much tighter budget. Like, for example, we bought swag for like 3,000 plus folks. Like, do we need drawstring bags and like 7 different types of stickers? We could probably talk about it, but I mean, I will say it maybe, but no, we can. I joke, but if expanding the electorate is a priority, I think this is a very important way to do it. Is the TLDR.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was as direct of an answer as you were looking for, but.
No, yes. And I think, again, I think the whole making sure that the mobilizers felt, part of the campaign was huge, and I really feel like, a lot of them understood the value of, the work they're going to be doing. And a lot of that came from how we were interviewing them and how, we were trained to interview and ask them questions. Because like you said, a lot of them were new, and, oftentimes you can come into those campaigns and, if you feel like you don't know,
you feel like you don't belong.
Yeah,
you feel like you should know so much more. And it's a horrible feeling. And then we're like, I wonder why that new person never came back. It's like, what would you really? You're not sure? Like, the Chewy bars were disgusting and they felt really stupid.
Yeah. And I feel like, too, I mean, it was so close. I mean, and then not only that, but Senator Ossoff, he was down like 90,000 votes, I think, next to Purdue, even though Purdue had, he didn't clear the mark in order to avoid a runoff. So, Ossoff had to make up, those 90,000 plus, whatever he needed to win. I mean, I just know I had a moment where I'm like, this is it. Like, he has to win. You know what I mean? Like,
what was your election night? Because I know that we stayed on the Zoom for a little while, and then like, because we were prepped as a team to not know for a while. It was like,
yes.
it's gonna on election night look not good, and then because Atlanta's gonna report it a little later or whatever. So just like, no one freak, but hold your breath. And then on election night, it was. I mean, there's a video of when the TV like flipped and said that it was 50-50, and then that Ossoff was like up a tiny bit, and the like camera pans to me, and I just start like sobbing. I'm just crying in a corner.
That is so funny. Well, I was 2 things. One was, I just remember it was like because we had, would have our team calls, in the evening, and it was like a day or two, it was a couple of days before election day, and I forgot who was brought on, but I think maybe one of the managers or whoever, you was a part of your team, the leadership.
Yeah.
But someone, he came on, and it was like this very sobering, kind of talk they were giving everybody, like, all right, you guys, kind of like, it's a lot of this is going to be on your shoulders because everybody else, all the other teams and departments, it got to a point where they could only do so much,
that was John Senior, right? I totally remember this. He's like, the calls have been made, the doors have been knocked, the mail's been sent, the TV ads are running. Like, this is the final hours is on you.
and we were all just like, we listened, and then he hopped off, and then, you were on the call, and all of us were, it was just kind of like one of the first times it was just kind of, quiet, kind of sinking in, because you're operating off of like pure adrenaline and, passion and motivation and, all of those things.
Oh,
And then, when you really like, when it gets really, really close, to actual election day, and you have those conversations, and they've seen the numbers, and they know. And I just know, like, after this man got off, he, it panned back to you, and you were like, "It's gonna be okay, guys." Don't worry. Want a little fear, but you just don't want to be like taken into like a paralyzed state.
I was totally, and like everyone knew what they had to do. It was like, we need to make sure that every single mobilizer has all of the support that they could possibly have on our end, so that their friends and family can get to the polls. That's the job.
Yeah, and everyone kind of was like, okay, kind of pulled back together, and then just, kept working our plan. And then it, everything came together, so for election day, I think, or election evening, I was on the Zoom with the rest of the Ossoff team, just waiting for the results to come in, because everything I watch, I do it through my laptop. So I didn't really have any other TVs on, and different people were calling me, in different parts of the country, whether it was like with an update, or they're like, oh my God, is it, is he going to pull it out? And we were waiting for like Fulton County and, DeKalb County, their numbers and everything. But anyway, I think I went to bed, maybe it was like, or I maybe logged off. I don't know if I went to bed, like right after I think John had pulled ahead, because I knew, I mean, we were feeling like he was going to pull it out, but I was like, I can't go to sleep until I see, that he's, pulled it out. And then I think the next, the morning, by that time, it was official. And then the insurrection.
It was, fascists really ruin everything.
Still.
Yeah.
But
what an unbelievable downer on top of that awesome I just remember watching these in the morning. I'm like, is this real? Like, what is happening right now?
My mom called me. So it was like they announced John won, and first we found out Warnock won the night before, so we were happy about that, and then it was official, that John won, and then I was like ready to celebrate and just relax, and then my mom calls me, and I thought she was calling to say like, oh yeah,
congrats.
Awesome. Yeah. And then she was like, "We're taking over the Capitol," and I'm like, "Who? What?" And I, and then I turned it on, and it was just mayhem. It was mayhem, but
it was mayhem.
Either way, Senator,
they were too late. We had
right. Exactly. And then now, David Perdue, he wants to get another beating. So I'm like, he's just a glutton for punishment. We'll see what happens if he makes it out in the primaries or not. But either way, I'm so proud of Georgia, because, so many people didn't believe in Georgia, and so many people did believe in Georgia and just kept working hard. And I know they've done like so much work, over a decade to get to this point. So to be able to be a part of it.
We stand on the shoulders of giants, like
seriously.
And like, that's how we talked about it. We're like, we are here, like, we're not here to save anyone. Like, they're not saving the state. Like, Georgia's like, they put in this work for so long. We are here to help with the final push to get over this, like we just have to get everyone over the finish line. Like, we're here, we're support staff. That's the job.
Yeah.
Like, just assist and support.
And it really takes a village and everybody, because it's such a huge, a huge task, to get people to turn out to vote, and then being in Georgia, make sure that it's counted, and all of that. But I'm definitely want to have you on again, so you can talk about doctors in politics, maybe sometime in 2022. I would love to hear about it. I think it's so important to have more than just, attorneys and business people, in elected office. I think we need and that's what I loved about Senator Ossoff and his documentary filmmaking background and journalism. And, we need a diverse group of elected officials.
Decision makers. Yeah. No, absolutely. I would love that. That would be wonderful. And if anyone wants to, has more questions about the program or wants to chat further, the best way to probably reach me would be, you can DM me on Twitter. It's at Zoe Hugs Trees. Not, but we will be having a series of posts and like publications coming out actually about the program. And Robin, I've been saying this for like months now, but really they're done and waiting for a final round of approvals. So I will let you know when those are live and you can share them with anyone that's interested.
Yes, please do. I would love that. I would love that. Well, thank you so much. And
Thanks for having me. Oh my God. It's nice to see you.
And thanks for just having a positive attitude and bubbly personality. All of that helps in those real stressful campaign situations.
The pleasure was mine. Thanks for everything, and this has been a blast. So let me know if you find yourself in DC or Arizona.
Oh yes, I will be there. Yeah.
Oh,
right?
Amazing.
Anyway, we'll talk offline.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But I will see you soon in DC.
Perfect. Bye,
okay,
everyone.
Cool.
Nice
All right. Have a good evening. Take care. Wonderful. So I know we had a little technical difficulty. Facebook is being completely weird, knocked me off, tried to lock my account off in the middle of this episode. So I'm going to post the full episode again in a separate post. But if you're just tuning in, that was Zoe Stein. She was the former Ossoff program director for the Community Mobilizing program during the runoffs in 2020. And I was also part of her team as a regional mobilizing manager. And we hired over 2,000, I think she said over 2,800 community mobilizers who were dispatched across the state of Georgia. There was one in every county in the state. And it was a program where the focus was to hire people, community mobilizers who had never been involved in a campaign before, who weren't really involved in politics, maybe had never even voted in a runoff before. And these people were hired, paid, trained in relational organizing. And relational organizing is peer-to-peer voter contact, talking to your family and friends, because that's one of the most effective ways to get people to turn out to vote, more effective than, knocking on doors and TV ads and everything else, but talking to someone or someone, in your network is very persuasive. So the community mobilizers used an app called Reach, and Reach is a relational organizing app, and they were trained on it, and they uploaded their contacts from their phone, family and friends. And then the community mobilizers was focusing on getting their networks of family and friends out to vote. Once they got those people out to vote, they would take it another step, see who else lives in that household of their family and friends, and see if they can get those people out to vote. And it really was, the amount of community mobilizers and the goals we had really were equal almost to the margin that Senator Ossoff won by. So it was the first of its kind. There's never been a paid relational organizing program like this for the Senate ever in history. And Senator Ossoff, he had to do something different during the runoffs to make sure that he could win. And the community mobilizing program was one of his ideas and his baby, and he really stayed connected and involved in it throughout election day. And even afterwards, he did a couple of virtuals for the community mobilizers after that. So this happened about a year or so ago today. And the program, it was started and everyone was hired just within a couple of weeks. And so it's really outstanding. There's articles out there about it if you want to Google John Ossoff Community Mobilizing Program Runoff, and you should, there's some information out there about it. So we'll see if we're going to able to replicate that in 2022. There have been, talks about that, but it was an honor to be a part of it. And I still keep up with some of my community mobilizers, and they were really the unsung heroes of the entire runoff, I would say. So anyway, we're going to go back to the rest of the show. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and highlight for you an initiative that Fair Fight Action are putting out there, or it's putting out there right now. They want Georgians to share their story and make their voices heard regarding obstacles to voting. So it says, are you a Georgian who has faced obstacles attempting to vote or to become registered to vote? Fair Fight Action wants to help you document your experience and make sure your vote is heard. Please fill out the form below to share your story, and a member of the Fair Fight Action team will follow up with you. And they have this form in various languages. So please, if you're in Georgia and if you've faced obstacles attempting to vote or obstacles to become a registered voter, please make sure you fill out this form. It doesn't have to be just like a wild, situation like you stood in line for 12 hours. I mean, that's important too, but even if you stood in line for 2 hours or 90 minutes or, whatever the case may be, if you felt like you faced an obstacle personally, in any kind of way, please share that, because it might not just be you, and then it can show a systemic pattern, which, there are systemic patterns in voter suppression in Georgia and across the South. So please make sure that you share your story, or if you know of someone else, please share this link with them. So also, let me go back to, thanks, Zoe, it was a pleasure. All right, so as you know, Stacey Abrams is running for governor. Excuse me, if you have not already, please go to staceyabrams.com and make a grassroots donation, become a founding donor of the campaign. You can donate $3, $5, you can be a monthly donor, $3 a month. Being a monthly donor is great because, you can sign up, they automatically, will take out the amount that you designate monthly. It helps the campaign to be able to budget ahead of time and know how much money, they have coming in and out if you're a monthly donor. So please, please, please donate if you can, as well as signing up to volunteer or applying to work for Team Abrams. So today, or was it yesterday? Yesterday, there was a lot of information that came out about the wave of new young voters and Black voters and voters of color in Georgia. So Stacey Abrams, she tweeted yesterday that Georgia is growing and it's changing. New voters, especially young people and people of color, have catalyzed the political transformation of our state, and the numbers speak for themselves. And so she broke it down according to new registrations and how they have increased over the last several years. And in 2021, there's been almost a 2-point increase. And she says there is a clear trajectory that has been present for a decade that is continuing of who has registered since 2018 and who is eligible to vote for Stacey this time that was not on the rolls last time. So that number is 1.3 million. So since 2018, there are 1.3 million new voters in Georgia, and nearly 250,000 new voters in Georgia just since November of 2020. And of those, 47% of that 1.3 million, of those 1.3 million, 47% are people of color, 31% are Black voters, and 43% are young voters under the age of 30. So we really have a huge opportunity here to win, and Stacey is really very close to making history in the United States. She'll be the first Black woman ever to be elected to governor of the United States. Or sorry, governor of the United States. Oh my God. So where my mind is, governor of Georgia, governor of Georgia. And maybe she will be the president of the United States one day too. But here's the first step. So we have the numbers. It's just a matter of protecting those votes and making sure everyone has proper access and equal and fair access to the ballot, which we know is going to be very hard in Georgia because these voter suppression issues. So this is why we have to donate early, volunteer early, start looking at your calendar if you want to come to Georgia and volunteer and help get out the vote, because it's just around the corner. That is so funny. Governor of the United States. Okay. Next, we're still supporting Beto O'Rourke for Texas governor. Please check out his website, betoo'rourke.com. And I think he has some new t-shirts and things that just came out last week. All of the proceeds go to his campaign. So again, same thing with Stacey. donate, sign up to volunteer. If you want to go to Texas and help get out the vote, which they will definitely need help as well, because they have a lot of new first-time voters that Beto's organization, Powered by the People, they've been registering hundreds of thousands of voters since 2018. So anytime, you're doing that, you really need help getting out the vote, because it's a lot of first-time voters, and you want to make sure that they are supported and they know, what's going on as far as the electoral process. So Stacey and Beto, they are the future of the Sun Belts, future of the Democratic Party. Georgia and Texas are the future, because the numbers are going in our direction and the demographics are moving in our direction. So again, this is why we have to get voting rights legislation passed at the federal level. Fair Fight Action still has their Freedom to Vote Fall going on. So please call your senators this week, or call your senators before the holidays. Take the time to do it. It can take less than like 2 minutes. Call 833-465-7142. If we can't get voting rights passed, it just makes it that much harder to be able to protect the vote. So if you want Stacey in office, if you want Beto in office, if you're concerned about free and fair and balanced elections, we have to get federal voting rights legislation passed. So again, call 833-465-7142. You'll put in your zip code. This is through Fair Fight. You put in your zip code and they'll connect you right away with your senators. And then you just let your senators know that you want the Freedom to Vote legislation to pass, as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And again, this is not about them. This is about you as a voter. So you want to let your voice be heard. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter if they support it or not, or if it's a red or blue state. You just want to still call to let your voice be heard on the issue, because you're their constituent and they work for you. We're also calling on President Biden. We're leaving comments on the White House comment line, 888-724-8746. We're asking that President Biden support the Senate in eliminating the filibuster, or carving out some kind of exceptions for voting rights legislation and other legislation that we all voted for and want passed, or voting for our elected officials for them to pass this legislation. So we have to keep pressuring President Biden and asking him to keep pressuring the Senate to eliminate the filibuster. He has changed his position on this over the last year, and he has said that he supports eliminating the filibuster, possibly to pass certain legislation. So let's keep that pressure going. All right, so the next episode 20, which is just mind-boggling to me. This show, Grassroots Voices, just started August 13th of 2021. And here we are now at episode 20. Excuse me. I'm so proud and happy that this show has been, useful and beneficial to people. So our 20th episode, we're going to discuss the future of Roe v. Wade and the fight for reproductive justice. We'll have special guest, Raula Samara. She's from Amplify, Georgia. Reverend Kenyatta Chinwe from Sister Song, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective, and Christian Adams from Access Reproductive Care Southeast. So they will be joining me next week. There's a huge case happening, a Mississippi case that has gone in front of the Supreme Court, which could be the case that the Supreme Court decides to rule to overturn Roe v. Wade, or to pretty much functionally overturn Roe v. Wade. So we're going to hear from people in the fight for reproductive justice to see what's to come and what we can do about what's happening, in Texas and some of these other states where these abortion bans and things are happening. We can find out how to support those states, as well as preparing for what could come next if Roe v. Wade is overturned, or if it isn't, but they gut a lot of the protections. We'll be able to find out what we can do about it in our own lives. Also, if you haven't already, join our other sister groups. We have Team Georgia Blue, Stacey Abrams Fair Fight Club, Stacey Abrams for the People, which used to be Stacey Abrams for President, is Stacey Abrams for the People now. A Blue Georgia for Stronger and Progressive America, Envoys for Humanity, Disability and Democracy, and the Rural Progressive and Afro Southeast Georgian. So these are all Facebook groups that have kind of joined together for for support in keeping Georgia blue and furthering the candidacies of various Democrats. So make sure to please join our groups. We don't all post the same information. Each group has its own personality and own membership. And then if you have any questions, comments, or show ideas, guest suggestions, please email me at grassrootsvoices999@gmail.com. Again, grassrootsvoices999@gmail.com, and I will do my best to get back to you and to share any information. And then again, if you want, you can make a grassroots donation to support me and the show. I mean, I just do this as a labor of love. This is not my job. I have a whole other separate professional life, but I do this, it does overlap with politics, but I do this as a labor of love, but it does take a lot of work, time, and energy. So if you want, you can always make a grassroots donation, $3, $5, $10. You can Venmo or PayPal me, but that's not the only way to help support the show. You can always like and share this episode. You can tag a friend in the comments, join our groups, and keep fighting for voting rights. So again, calling your senators about the federal legislation that's hung up in the Senate, and making sure that they know that we need this voting rights legislation passed. That will be a huge help to the show. So again, thank you for joining me. For those of you who have not seen Stacey Abrams' launch video, I want to go ahead and play that before I close out the show. So far, her launch video has over 3 million views just within the last several days. So again, if you haven't seen it already, I'm going to play it. And if you have seen it, please make sure to share this video with your networks, family, friends, and ask people to either donate a grassroots donation early or to sign up to volunteer to support Stacey.
I've worked a lot of jobs in my life. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming. Absolutely.
And for the past 4 years,
Thank you for our daily bread.
when the hardest times hit us all,
Amen.
I've worked to do my part to help families make it through.
There you go.
Paying off medical debt for 68,000 Georgians. Expanding access to vaccines. Bringing supplies to overwhelmed food banks. Lending a hand across our state, especially in rural Georgia. We help finance small businesses trying to stay afloat. And I spoke up for families being left behind. While my jobs have changed, what I know to be true has not. Our values are still strong, no matter where we come from in Georgia or how long we've been here.
Okay, I'm not sure why that.
Working, have a voice. Because in the end, we are one Georgia. Regardless of the pandemic or the storms, the obstacles in our way or the forces determined to divide us. My job has been to put my head down and keep working toward one Georgia. For that farmer in Peach County, the teacher in Sparta, the mechanic in College Park, for our next generation who should have more than we can imagine. Because opportunity and success in Georgia shouldn't be determined by your zip code, background, or access to power. But if our Georgia is going to move to its next and greatest chapter, we're going to need leadership.
I think you'd make a really good governor. All you gotta do is stay tough and stay brave.
Thank you. Leadership that knows how to do the job. Leadership that doesn't take credit without also taking responsibility. Leadership that understands the true pain folks are feeling and has real plans. That's the job of governor, to fight for one Georgia, our Georgia. And now it's time to get the job done.
All right, so this is exciting. I'm going to play one more video to take us out, and then I will see everybody next week for the next show. Thank you again for joining me, and let's hear a little bit from two powerhouses, Latasha Brown and Tiffany Cross.
All right, it's a rainy night in Georgia for some voter suppression enthusiasts. Stacey Abrams is making her second bid to be Georgia's governor after narrowly losing to Governor Brian Kemp in 2018 under an intentionally flawed voter system designed to favor Republicans.
I did not challenge the outcome of the election, unlike some recent folks did. What I said was that the system was not fair. And leaders challenge systems. Leaders say, we can do better. And that's what I declared. I could not, in good conscience, say that in order to protect my political future, I'm going to be silent about the political present, which is that we had a system under a leader that sought to keep people from casting their ballots, that threw those ballots out, that said that voter suppression was a viable tactic for winning elections.
Between flipping blue last year and helping to deliver the power of the federal government to Democrats, Donald Trump feuding with his own acolyte, Brian Kemp, and Raphael Warnock's Senate race likely to spur voters to the polls. That midnight train to Georgia just might lead to a historic victory for Abrams. Joining me now, the co-founder of Black Voters Matter, LaTosha Brown, who looks like she's joining us from a winter wonderland, and political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein, who's clearly losing the battle in Room Raiders this morning. Thank you guys both for joining me. LaTosha, I'm going to start with you. Should Abrams prevail, she will become the first Black woman governor in U.S. history. This would be a really big deal. However, I am concerned about the voter suppression schemes happening there in Georgia. Brian Kemp, longtime champion of voter suppression. What needs to happen on the ground there to ensure her victory, Senator Raphael Warnock, and that people have a clear path to the ballot box?
You know, it is going to be an uphill battle. What we saw is in 2018, we didn't have the presence of SB 202, which is the bill that was passed last year that was specifically designed to marginalize Black voters and voters, Democratic-leaning voters in the state. However, some things have changed as well from organizers doing the work directly on the ground. Since 2018, we've been able to capture, the Democrats have captured 2 congressional seats, they've captured 3 state Senate seats and 12 House of Representative seats because the base is becoming solidified. And so I think it's going to be a very competitive race, and I think that she has an amazing opportunity to be able to go in as the first Black governor of the state of Georgia. And we need new, bold leadership.
Yeah, I agree. Greg, I want to turn to you because Stacey Abrams has some quite huge endorsements of her. And I want to play a soundbite for you from one of her biggest endorsers, it seems. And we will talk about that on the other side of the break.
When Stacey Abrams says, I'm not going to concede, that's okay. No problem. Oh, she's not going to concede. She's not going to concede. Of course, having her, I think, might be better than having your existing governor, if you want to know the truth. Might very well be better.
He's pretty much endorsed her, although he's also endorsed Herschel Walker. So I don't know how you balance those two things. But what impact will that have on the race, Greg?
Yeah, this might very well be the biggest test of Donald Trump's influence in the nation in the midterms, because as you just heard, he's still denigrating Brian Kemp, who he endorsed in 2018. He's still fighting this feud with his own party in Georgia. He's endorsed an entire slate of Republican office holders for higher office, going against incumbents in many cases. And so Republicans are going to continue to war with each other, which is basically a gift for Democrats in Georgia who've been told about the parallels to Virginia. But Democrats in Georgia can say, look, not only is the electorate in Georgia much more diverse than the Democratic electorate in Virginia, but also Republicans here have to worry about this infighting that Virginia Republicans didn't have to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think Brian Kemp even survives the infighting from the Republican Party? I mean, is this guaranteed that this is the person that Abrams will face off with, Greg?
Yeah, this is maybe the biggest question in Georgia politics right now, because former Senator David Perdue is leaning towards a run. We're not sure if he's going to pull the trigger yet, but he is leaning towards a run right now. And he would be a very formidable candidate. He lost to John Ossoff just a few months ago, but was a one-term U.S. senator, and he would have Donald Trump's endorsement. And at that very same rally, Donald Trump stood up there on that podium and begged David Perdue to run. So this infighting is far from over in Georgia.
Yeah, we can't assume that it will be an Abrams Kemp rematch. Latasha, something interesting about the state where I grew up, Georgia, and you and I have talked about this a lot. Black voters are the base vote there. Black voters represent nearly half of the vote in Georgia. However, Latino and Asian Americans have been key demographics to Georgia's registered voters since 2016. So this multi-ethnic coalition of voters there will be quite powerful. Will that be enough to leapfrog over the voter suppression schemes? And what kind of activity are you seeing bubbling up right now?
Listen, I have to be honest and say part of the reason why organizations and people like myself and others have been pushing Congress to pass federal legislation to protect the right to vote is because we're in an uphill battle. That what we're seeing in the state of Georgia is the Republicans are using every trick possible to be able to weaponize the administrative process, to take over election boards. They've actually drawn a district in the last 10 years. What the census shows us that 100% of the population growth in the state of Georgia have been communities of color. Yet they have created and drawn a district that they have an advantage, right, of districts in this state. That is how much they're willing to go to cheat to try to maintain power so that the minority rules. The good thing is that, as you said, there are more people that are engaging. There is a broad-based, multiracial, multi-generational coalition that has been working together and has been building for the last decade. And we saw the results in 2020 and 2020. We saw many of the results on local races in 2021, and I think we'll continue to see the strength of those voters, but we need to have federal legislation to protect, to make sure that the Republicans are not weaponizing the administrative process against the growth that's happening here.
Yeah, and I just want to correct our banner there. It is Black, Latino, and Asian American voters there. The Asian American community in Georgia is a powerful, fast, quickly growing voting bloc there. Greg, Atlanta has a new mayor. Andre Dickens comes from the city council. He was just elected this week. I'm sorry, we're still Saturday, so he was just elected this week. What impact do you think that will have? Because a lot of people think of Georgia as Atlanta, and Atlanta is just a city. Georgia's a big territory surrounded by a lot of red specks there. But I'm just curious what impact his election might have on this bigger race.
Yeah, I mean, really, it was a sign that Atlanta's electorate is becoming more progressive. He came from those progressive roots. He had endorsements from many of his predecessors and many fellow colleagues on the city council. He was an Atlanta city councilman, but he's coming in with some big ideas and some very progressive ideas about housing, affordable housing, about income inequality, about criminal justice. He had endorsements from many of Atlanta's and Georgia's main Democratic leaders because of those ideas. And his first real mission is to reset relations with state Republican leaders who are trying to basically pass legislation that would de-annex about a fifth of the city, the wealthy white northern part of the city called Buckhead.
Wow. Well, we will have a lot to talk about in the coming months when it relates to Georgia. I look forward to having you both back many times. Thank you so much, Latasha Brown and Greg Bluestein.
So just to give you a little preview, the numbers are looking good, but it's just, again, we need federal voting rights legislation. We need that to pass. We also need to make sure that we're sharing voter stories here in Georgia about any obstacles that you've had to vote or to register to vote. Go to Fair Fight's website and share your story. And we also need to make sure that people have access to the ballot, are able to have their vote counted, are able to get to the polls. So it is going to be an uphill battle, but at least we have the hope that the demographics have changed enough in Georgia that Stacey Abrams has a strong possibility of winning, but we still have to put in the work and do everything we can because it is going to be a fight. But just to highlight again, a few things before I close out, earlier in the show, we heard from Lauren Groh-Wargo. She was on MSNBC on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, and she was just talking about, it doesn't really matter, who is the Republican candidate for governor in the end, because both Perdue and Kemp are very incompetent and inept and really don't have, Georgians' best interest in mind. Kemp right now, he is depriving 500,000 Georgians of healthcare. And this is healthcare coverage that taxpayers have already paid for, but because he won't expand Medicaid, he is preventing 500,000 Georgians in the middle of a pandemic from having access to healthcare. Also, here in Georgia, over a decade, 10 hospitals have closed across the state, the majority of them being in rural communities. Both Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock just secured a deal for hundreds of millions of dollars as far as bringing hospitals and healthcare access to Georgia. Also, Purdue wants to eliminate the income tax, which would impact like $14 billion of the budget. But he's not really talking about how is that money going to be replaced, or what is this money going to be used on? And then here you have Stacey Abrams running for governor, and she wants to expand Medicaid, make sure that people have more access to healthcare, that there's more rural hospitals, and make sure there's better funding for education, especially public schools who've been terribly underfunded. And then making sure that there's proper COVID response and vaccination response and things like that happening, because again, Kemp did not handle that very well. Georgia lost over 1% of its population, died during the pandemic. And these numbers I was given last year, so it's probably higher now. So we really need Stacey Abrams' leadership, and we really need to get rid of these people who don't care about other people. And Kemp and Purdue have both shown that throughout their careers. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thanks for dealing with all the technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on, a lot of glitches and things with Facebook lately, or Meta or whatever. But thanks for hanging in there. I'll see everybody next week. And again, this is Grassroots Voices with Robin and Friends, where community and politics meet. I'm Robin, and thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Take care.